Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you with Toadstool Sports. It is Tuesday, March 10th. Is that what it is? March 8th? March 9th? What? Slight win on the show yesterday if you sprinkle underdog money lines like I recommend that you do. I told you Santa Clara was going to win the game outright. We lost on Robert Morris. Fuck them. Blowing a 6-point lead almost immediately in the middle of the second half and then never coming back. Santa Clara outright win. So made it an okay day. Good thing I added that to the card. Trying to be selective here. The big conference tournaments start with their opening rounds. As, you know, the madness really starts to ramp up here. I'm going to give out one college basketball play. You already know what it is because I gave it to you last night. We'll talk about it. It's not really the greatest number, but I still think it's worthy. And then I'm going to give out one hockey play. I have a few hockey leans. There are some games that I like in hockey that just don't quite get there for me. I got one play. You probably won't guess what it is. And then I will give out one NBA play, and you probably won't guess that one either, actually. So that's how we're doing it. Noted Gems, what's up, man? Thank you, sir. Thank you for checking out the show. Baylor and ASU. All right, well, let's talk about it. That'll be the first game I'll talk about. It's at 12:30, so I'm going to do it conference by conference, I guess, because that's what I usually do just to kind of avoid confusion. I do it in chronological order, but conference by conference. The whole show will be done in plenty of time. Baylor and Arizona State. Baylor is up from a 3-point favorite to a 4-point favorite. My initial reaction to this was, like, I didn't know what the line was going to be. I knew Baylor was going to be favored. I'm like, well, Baylor's the better team, so I think they should win this game. In fact, I think they're a pretty underrated team. But looking at the market here, we got Baylor. The initial moved Baylor up to a 4-point favorite. They got 85% of the tickets on them, but only 56% of the cash. So the market read is saying to take the points with Arizona State, saying that that's where the money is coming back. I don't know, man. This is not going to be one of my plays. Baylor is the better team. These teams did play once this year, I believe once. Baylor won. Only by 5, though, at home. The other thing you do have to look at is, like, what was the number when these teams played? Baylor was actually an 8.5-point favorite in the home game, and that would indicate that they should probably be a heavier favorite than a 4-point favorite here. If they were 8.5 not that long ago at home, it seems like this line is short. I don't believe they played otherwise. I think that was the only time they played this year. But then you do have to also take into account, I believe Hurley is fired now, right? Let me see. For Arizona State here. Am I right about that? Yeah, here it is. Possible send-off. I think he did get fired, though. Let me make sure of that. Bobby Hurley, Arizona State's coach. Hold on. I'm going to look it up real quick. He's not going to return. I believe he's going to coach in this game, though, it looks like. I don't think he got fired. I think he stepped down. Let me see. This doesn't really say if he's going to coach this game or not. I think he will. Yeah, so I don't know. So that might motivate Arizona State a little bit, to be honest. So, you know, I guess I will lean slightly to Arizona State just because of that, because they might be a little bit more motivated just because they don't want to set, you know, they want to send Hurley off, but maybe they don't like him because he's a dick. I don't know. But, I mean, he's been there for a while. It seems like maybe the team might want to step it up in a case like this just to send him off. You know, I would say actually both of these teams are better than people think they are. You know, these games are in Kansas City, by the way, so no real location edge for either team here. I'll agree with the market. It's slightly lean towards taking the 4 with Arizona State, but I don't think there's a whole lot of line value there, to be honest. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Yes, sir. I'm very selective, man, so I'm going to talk about, like, all the games and give, you know, kind of loose opinions on them, but my strongest opinions are the plays that I give out here. Mr. Pinsey won on Troy. Yes, that was easy. I should have added it to my card, to be honest. I mean, when you have a rare situation of a team playing a 6th game in 6 nights, and like I said, Troy was not at the same disadvantage a lot of those other teams are at, because Troy had already played a game in the tournament as well on the other side, so they got used to the venue again. They shook off the nerves, you know what I mean? And Troy actually dominated Southern Miss, even though the final score didn't look that way. Troy clearly the better team as well, and they're unlike Marshall, Coastal, whatever. Those teams are bad. Those two specific teams, really, especially Marshall, not good on defense. Troy kind of is, so that was definitely different there. Kyle, what's up? No to Gems, yes. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I mean, I don't know about a tough defense, but Troy's defense is better than a lot of those crappy defenses in that conference, including Georgia Southern's. Yes, sir. All right. Big 12. We'll continue with the Big 12. Utah is playing Cincinnati in the afternoon here. Cincinnati's up to an 11.5-point favorite in this one. Now, Cincinnati is definitely the better team. I think Utah is legitimately the worst team in this conference in the Big 12. They did finish on a huge losing streak, and sometimes I will say these conference tournaments are kind of like a reset, where when you finish the season on a horrible note, sometimes you will just reset and you'll come out, you know, because you have nothing to lose at this point if you're Utah. Just go out, play loose, you know, try to put up a good performance. And in fact, they did actually play fairly well at Cincinnati when they played them. Recently, they only lost by 4. The issue with that is that Cincinnati might take them more seriously because of that, because they'll remember that. Cincinnati, by the way, they were 12.5-point favorites in that game, and they're almost favored by the same amount here on a neutral. So that would indicate that the line in the game today is a little bit big based on this. Like, it should probably not be as high as it is if you consider this line to have been accurate. Now, I believe Cincinnati was in a bad spot in that game, too. Well, they had a look ahead to Kansas, I guess, a game they wound up winning, by the way. So I think they probably got caught looking ahead there and almost lost to Utah for that reason. Cincinnati has a motivational edge here, and I think that's actually what's jacking the lineup on Cincinnati, is that everybody knows Cincinnati is like a bubble team, and they got to win a couple of games in this tournament. Like, they got to beat Utah and then win another game or maybe 2 to maybe even be in consideration here. But what that's going to do on a team like Cincinnati, who's clearly the better team, it's going to make that line a little bit too big. And as you can see here, 71% of the tickets are on Cincinnati, but 52% of the cash on Utah. So I would actually lean to taking the points with Utah in this one. I think the line's just too high. I think Cincinnati will win the game, but I would not lay those points. Cincinnati's also not a very good offensive team. They're very good on defense. The total's really low as well for that reason. So I think Cincinnati will get through the game, but I wouldn't expect like a blowout win from them there, which is not something that they're really equipped to do necessarily. All right. Big 12, the night slate, we have Kansas State and BYU. BYU, despite being down their second best player, Saunders, BYU is up to a 10.5-point favorite in this one. BYU, they should get into the tournament even if they lose this game. Although losing this game wouldn't help them, really. This Kansas State team is quite bad. But the spot's not very good for BYU. BYU ended the season with a really good win over Texas Tech, and I don't like that when a team ends the season on a good note like that. Like, it could still put them kind of in a letdown spot coming into this one. They already won the one game they played at Kansas State. They beat them by double digits, so they might not totally take Kansas State seriously. Now, Kansas State, we don't know what we're going to get out of them. They're riding out the stretch here. They fired their coach not too long ago, which I don't know if it really sparked them or not. They did get a win against West Virginia in there. They finished the season with a loss to Kansas on the road. I mean, pretty expected. This Kansas State team, the problem with them playing against BYU is that both teams are kind of similar and that both teams like to go fast. Both teams are not very good on defense. So BYU's just better at it. So BYU should win the game, but I also wouldn't lay the points. The total's actually gone down. So I actually think this game, an over is maybe the way to look in this one. Just the way these two teams match up, like stylistically, the way these two teams play, over makes sense to me. The total at 166 doesn't even seem that high to me, to be honest. 71% of the tickets are on BYU for a side there, 66% of the cash on Kansas State. I'd agree with taking the points with Kansas State. When you get into games with totals that high, though, it gets a little bit more iffy taking the points. So probably my preference in that one would be over. And then Oklahoma State, Colorado in the later game here. Colorado down from a 2.5-point favorite to a 2-point favorite. Public looks like they've come in on Colorado, which is odd. I thought the public would come in on Oklahoma State because they pretty much have had the better record than Colorado all season. 75% of the tickets and only 55% of the cash on Colorado, though. So the odds makers, I was actually kind of surprised the line came out at 2.5. I thought it might be like 1.5. Like almost either way, really. But the odds makers telling you Colorado is actually surprisingly the slightly better team, but now the money seems to be coming in on Oklahoma State. I think you could argue Oklahoma State's resume is better. This is probably the game that I have the least good of a read on in this conference. I don't like this game at all. Oklahoma State, both teams actually put up huge performances in their final games. Oklahoma State almost beat Houston. I mean, they were like tied with Houston in the final couple minutes of that game, and they wound up losing by 7. I watched the end of that game, so I would really not want Oklahoma State coming off of a game like that. But Colorado did play fairly tough against Arizona as well, but they weren't as close by the end of it. They lost by 10, and they were down pretty much double digits with probably about 4 minutes to go in that game. So Oklahoma State did put in the stronger effort in their game, so I actually kind of like Colorado in this game. I don't know what's going on with the market there. Colorado did beat Oklahoma State at home, but I don't know how much weight you could put into that. They won by 14, but that's Oklahoma State going into a high elevation game in Colorado. Probably not the best spot for Oklahoma State there. But, because Colorado won that game, that might mean Oklahoma State would be the team to make the adjustments, right? Like, you don't want to automatically say, oh, this team beat this team once, that means it's going to happen again. And, in fact, a lot of times the opposite can be true, especially if it's in quick succession, like with, unfortunately, Montana last night, because I still thought Northern Colorado would win that game. That did not happen. All right, anyway, that's the Big 12 breakdown there. Next up, we are going to go to the SWAC, because they have an afternoon game at 2 p.m. Alcorn State with a surprise upset win last night. Steve McNair's alma mater, by the way, Alcorn State. Didn't play basketball, I don't think, only football. They pulled off the upset yesterday in a pretty big way, winning by double digits against an Alabama State team that was probably about a 7-point favorite, I think, in that game. Now, normally you would say, well, that's going to put them in a letdown spot here, but tournaments are a little bit different, man. Every team's got motivation. Every team's trying to win. Alcorn State now has a game under their belt. These games are all neutral site as well. They're all being played in Atlanta or outside of Atlanta. Alcorn State won yesterday, and even though they did pull off the upset, I think it does give them an advantage to some extent because you're not going to be that tired yet, even though you're playing a back-to-back. You know, you've only played one game. You had some days off before that game, and you get adjusted to the venue. So a team that just played a game actually has an edge. Prairie View A&M here has not played yet in the tournament, and these teams faced off near the end of the season, and Prairie View won with ease by 21 points at Prairie View close to the end of the season. So that result could mislead you a little bit maybe. I know Alcorn sucks. There's no doubt about it. They're a really bad team. They're not the better team here either, but I think that they might make some adjustments off of that loss. I think the fact they have this game under their belt is actually a positive more than a negative, and I think it's more of a negative that Prairie View has to come into this with some additional time off. They haven't played yet in the tournament, and they finished the season winning 3 games in a row. So I actually would lean to Alcorn in this game. Let me see here. Prairie View's up to a 6.5-point favorite. By the way, the other thing that is really interesting about this is this line seems way off, and I don't know the personnel on these teams at all, so I don't know if there's an injury or what. But looking at this game where Prairie View was at home like 3 games ago, this game was on February 28th. Prairie View at home was a 4.5-point favorite, and now they're laying 6 on a neutral. What the hell is going on with that line? How could the line be bigger on a neutral court than it was at home for Prairie View? Now, I know these teams have like 0 home court advantage, so, you know, all right. So the line today should probably be about the same than 4.5. The fact that it's 6 is very strange to me. So I think there is actually line value on Alcorn State as well. So yeah, I would take the points with Alcorn in that one. They're an awful team, but that's probably one of the stronger opinions I have on the day. I don't really want to put that on my card, but that is what I think about that game. And then the other game in the SWAC is, I think there are only 2. Let me see, is Grambling State and Jackson State. And I told you Grambling is the better of these 2 teams, significantly so, even though Grambling is the 9 seed, and Jackson State is, I don't even know what seed they are, but they're a higher seed than Grambling is. Grambling had to play yesterday, but Grambling is like the best defense in this entire conference, so the fact they got a 9 seed is really, really misleading. Grambling is a lot better than that. And as you can see, they're now an 8-point favorite. They opened 5.5 or 6, and it's already up to 8. So there's been steam on Grambling here, and I agree with it. I would lean towards laying the points with Grambling in this one. 8 is getting a little pricey, though. 50% of tickets, 85% of the cash on Grambling. Yeah, I would worry that line is just a bit too high, but Grambling, they're the better team here. It's a misleading setup here because they're the lesser seed, like I said. So when you see the lesser seed being that much of a favorite, that is something you got to pay attention to, because the odds makers are telling you, like, don't pay attention to the seeding here at all. The seeding is actually wrong. Grambling won easily last night against Mississippi Valley. Mississippi Valley State, they're the worst team in Division I. So Grambling, they basically had like a tune-up in that game, but that's good because they got a game out of the way in the tournament, just like I said with Alcorn. But this is better for Grambling because they had an easy game. They were a favorite. They won. They actually covered, but it was just an easy game. So they get that game out of the way, get the nerves out of the way. You get adjusted to the venue. Jackson State has not done that yet. They haven't played in the tournament yet. They finished the season on a 2-game win streak, also finishing by beating Mississippi Valley. But, you know, that momentum could be stopped a little bit by the fact that they had some time off now. These 2 teams did play each other during the regular season. Grambling won at Jackson State by 3. It looks like that was the only time they played. I might be missing something, but I think so. But Grambling, I'm assuming they were a favorite on the road in that game. They're just the better team, man. You know, I would lean towards laying it with Grambling, but 8, again, is a little bit too much of a price, I would say. Historical spreads and totals. I haven't found one that like makes it like really easy to see them in like a good way, but you can find them on this site on pregame, which is what I use every day. If you go, you can select any date you want here, but the issue is like you pick a date, you know, you have to use this stupid date selector. So if you want to go back like years ago, it makes it a little bit difficult. I don't know. If you click on one of the dates, see if it adds anything to the URL, and you might be able to like manually update the URL with a different date. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it does because it might just use JavaScript behind the scenes and not update the URL. So I don't know. All right. Let me see. What else we got? So that was the SWAC. The ACC starts at 2 p.m. with Pitt and Stanford. These games are in Charlotte, North Carolina. Could be a weird venue for these Pacific Coast teams, having to now play on the East Coast again. Although, of course, they all did it at some point this year, but it's still kind of weird for them. Now, for Stanford, everybody knows Stanford's a bubble team now. Oh, they got 20 wins. Everybody, pretty much I think the public is going to be trying to bet Stanford here because they know, Stanford's going to have a huge motivation here because they're trying to make the tournament. Now they've won 4 games in a row, but that's kind of the problem. They've won 4 games in a row. They just finished the season beating NC State, which is a huge win, an upset on the road. Now, I wonder, do you think Stanford stayed in North Carolina knowing that the ACC tournament was going to be here? Did they just stay in North Carolina? Because that would actually help them a little bit if they did, because they were at NC State. It wouldn't really make sense to fly back to Stanford when you know you're going to be in the ACC tournament, right? So my guess would be that they did stay here, but having days off is going to hurt their momentum a little bit. I think with 4 wins in a row, they're coming off a huge win. Everybody's talking about how they're a bubble team now. And Pitt sucks, so nobody's going to want Pitt here. Pitt did finish the season with a win at Syracuse. Pitt did play Stanford a few games prior to that, lost at Stanford, but Pitt having to play on the Pacific Coast, you don't expect them to win that game. They only lost by 8, which isn't too bad. Stanford is laying a lot of points, I think, in this game. Let me see. It's less than I thought, actually, 5.5. 88% of the tickets and cash on Stanford, though. It really looks pretty easy to lay it with Stanford, so I wouldn't do that. I would take the points with Pitt. Like I've been saying, when you have these teams that everybody knows this team is on the bubble and whatever, and they're going to give you motivation, you want to find spots where that team is an underdog against a team that's better than they are. You don't want to play them as a favorite because you're not really getting any value doing it. They'll usually be jacked up as a favorite. Like the line will be too high, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I would probably take the points with Pitt here. And if Stanford actually loses that game, yeah, they're not going to make the tournament. I don't know if they're going to make it anyway. They're going to have to make a run here, but it also does put the pressure on a team like that. The reason why I liked Santa Clara last night was, yeah, they're a bubble team, but they were an underdog against a team that's considered to be better than they are, and they already had played a game in that tournament, you know what I mean? So the setup was different for Santa Clara last night. All right, other games in the ACC, Syracuse and SMU are playing. Same thing with SMU. Everybody knows SMU's on the bubble. They got to win. They've been playing bad basketball. They've fallen onto the bubble. So there is a little bit of a difference between SMU and Stanford. Stanford finished the season hot, which I think is actually bad going into the tournament because the tournament is like a reset. So whatever momentum you had, depending on how many days off you had, if you had the more days off that you had, the worse that it is, I think, as far as like breaking your momentum. So I think it's not that great for Stanford, but for SMU, I think it's actually a positive to have that break with the fact that they lost like 4 games in a row to finish the season. But everybody still knows SMU's trying to make the tournament here, man. They're laying 5 against Syracuse, which might be a little bit too extreme here. Nobody's going to want Syracuse in this one. SMU, the pressure's going to be on them here, man. And they're not that used to playing in this ACC tournament either. Neither is Stanford, like I said. These teams that are newer to the ACC, they're not really used to this particular tournament setup. So for SMU, I would fade them as well. They did lose at Syracuse, by the way, not that long ago, which was one of their losses when they were still playing well. They had to go to Syracuse, and they lost a really close game. Syracuse is just free-rolling, though, and they had a bad end to the season as well. They lost 5 games in a row, so the same thing applies to both teams here as far as that's concerned. Both teams ended the season on a bad note, so that the extra rest can kind of help break that momentum for both teams. I would lean towards taking the points with Syracuse in that one. But, again, it's not a strong opinion from me. And then the ACC, the last game at night is Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. These teams actually played twice during the regular season, I believe. Wake won at home by 3, and then Virginia Tech won at home by 19 in the most recent matchup. But if you look at the spreads in those games are kind of telling you that Wake is actually the somewhat better team. Virginia Tech was 3.5 at home, so they weren't quite getting full home court, I don't think. I think Virginia Tech's home court is pretty strong. And Wake, when they played at home, were actually a 5.5-point favorite, although the lines have to adjust a little bit once you see, oh, this team's not as good as we thought that they were. They are not who we thought that they were. Wake did finish the season with a win over Cal at home, but Virginia Tech is coming off a much more difficult game. Virginia Tech, plus everybody knows Virginia Tech's on the bubble. The public's going to look at this and see a short line of Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech has the better record. The public is going to flock to Virginia Tech in this game, man. And I don't like the setup because they did just have a huge game against Virginia, their huge rival. They'd beaten them the first time this season, too. But to finish the season, they went on the road, and they only lost by 4 to Virginia. They played really tough there. So I think it's going to be tough for them to get up off the mat and play this game again, especially against a team they just smacked in Wake Forest. I think Wake Forest is under the radar here, man. I would lean to Wake in this one. It looks like the market agrees with me here. Virginia Tech, 83% of the tickets and only 52% of the cash. So there's a major ticket versus cash disparity right now. Again, these numbers could change a lot during the day, but it looks way too easy to lay the 2.5 with Virginia Tech, so I would not do that. Yeah, I would lean towards taking the points in that one. All right. Big Ten starts in the early evening on Peacock at 5 p.m. with Maryland and Oregon. I think Oregon is one of the more underrated teams in the Big Ten. People just think that they suck, and I'm not going to say that they're good, but they're definitely better than Maryland. And Maryland is coming off a pretty ugly, Maryland is coming off a really tough performance against Illinois. They almost beat Illinois. I watched some of that game the other night. That was a huge home finale for Maryland. This Maryland team, they know they're not going anywhere, man. They kind of treated that game like their Super Bowl. So I do not like Maryland coming off a game like this. This is one of my stronger opinions of the day. I almost added Oregon to my card, man. I like Oregon in this game. Maryland, really tough spot coming off that game. I know they lost 4 in a row to end the season. And like I did say, a team on a losing streak sometimes will hit a reset button when they get into the tournament, but I just don't see it in this case. Oregon, by the way, did win at Maryland earlier this year, which is one of Oregon's only good road performances, because Oregon has been really bad outside of the Pacific time zone. A lot of these Pacific Coast Big Ten teams, especially UCLA, are having real problems playing outside of the Pacific time zone. But at least for Oregon, one of their best road games was the game where they beat Maryland on the road. For Oregon, they finished the season beating Washington. That was a decent win for Oregon there. But they're the better team here. I just worry about the venue here. Now, these games are all being played in Chicago. The venue is not really that helpful to Maryland either. They got to travel to Chicago. For Oregon, I don't know. I really kind of wanted to add Oregon here, man. But I looked at their road games, and I'm like, this isn't good. Like, their one really good one was the one against this Maryland team, but they lost at Rutgers. They got absolutely destroyed at Nebraska. They lost at Washington, but that's a Pacific Coast game. They lost close at Purdue. That was a good one. They got killed at Indiana. They did win at USC, but again, Pacific Coast. They lost at Northwestern, only by 1, though. Northwestern's not that bad, and they got killed by Illinois. You know, I'm considering it because I'm looking at it, and I'm like, well, the games that they lost badly on the road were pretty much to all the better teams, and they did fine against, like, the worst teams for the most part, although they did lose to Rutgers. It was close, though. But you will be asking Oregon to lay points in this game. They're up to a 3.5-point favorite. They are getting the money. 55% of tickets on Maryland, 58% of the cash on Oregon. So the real money, I think, is coming in on Oregon in this game. This is very close to being a play for me. I think I'm not going to quite do it, but yeah, I would lean to Oregon. And, you know, it kind of surprises me. The public likes Maryland in this game, probably just because they just saw what Maryland did against Illinois. That's probably the only reason why. Because Oregon, as bad as they've been this year, their record is better than Maryland's is, and they're the better team. The odds makers are telling you they are the better team here. So, that's what I got in that game. That's one of my stronger opinions of the day for sure, Oregon. And then Penn State is playing Northwestern. Northwestern is definitely the better team. Penn State is legitimately one of the worst teams in this conference. 94% of tickets, 99% of the cash on Northwestern for now. They're laying 6. This game also on Peacock, by the way. I don't really see Northwestern losing this game. They're a really undervalued commodity, man. Like, people are going to look and see, Northwestern had this horrible record that wasn't even that much better than Penn State's, and maybe think the 6 looks too big, even though right now it does look like the public percentage is on Northwestern. Yeah, Northwestern did blow out Penn State when they played at Northwestern, but I would probably lay it with Northwestern in this one. I know Penn State ended the season on another losing streak. Northwestern lost as well at Minnesota, which wasn't that great either. So if both teams show up and give you an effort in this one, Northwestern, they are an undervalued commodity. They've been undervalued pretty much all season, so I would probably lean towards the favorite in that game as well and laying it with Northwestern. But that one, I don't like that one anywhere near as much as I like Oregon, though, of course. In fact, I don't really have a strong opinion on this one, really. But Oregon, I like. All right. Now we'll go to American East. Is that next? Yeah. UMass Lowell and UMBC. We're in the semifinals in the American East. And in the American East, the better seed is hosting these games. So UMBC is at home for this game, which is part of the reason why they're such a big favorite here. UMass Lowell is not that good. They're the 4 seed here. They did beat the 5, Albany. They did just play UMBC at home, and they lost horribly by 24. But UMBC is just the better team, man. UMass Lowell has been very non-competitive against them. They lost the game at UMBC earlier in the season by over 20 points as well. They just haven't been able to match up against them. So, yeah, UMBC, they might take them a bit lightly for that reason, but I really don't think they're going to lose this game. UMBC, both teams have already played in the tournament. So both teams have like a similar rest scenario here, and both teams coming off a win. UMBC easily beat a bad UNH team coming into this one. I don't know if I would lay the points with UMBC in this one, though. I think the line is pretty close to where it was when they played at home against Lowell earlier in the season. Actually, no, it's not. I think UMBC was like a double-digit favorite. The first time they played at home, I'm pretty sure they were like at least a 10-point favorite. Now they're only 8. So believe it or not, I actually think maybe there's even some value on the UMBC side here. 53% of the tickets and 78% of the cash on UMBC. They opened at 7, and it's gone kind of above that now, that key-ish number of 7, because teams stop intentionally fouling usually when they're around, down by 7, because it's the 3-possession threshold. I would still probably lay it, though, if I was going to play this game. It's up to 8. I think it's a mismatch. I just don't think UMass Lowell can really compete with them. I think the line is low, although the line is Lowell. I don't know. It looks almost too easy to do it, but this is not a game the public is really going to have that much of an eye on. And then the other game is NJIT in Vermont. I've been saying it all year that NJIT is a fraud. They did beat Maine in the 6 versus 3 matchup, barely. It did end a losing streak for them, so that's at least a positive for them. Believe it or not, they split the season series with Vermont. They won on the road at Vermont, and then they only lost at home by 6. But I don't think they're going to go into Vermont and win this game again. There's no way. Vermont is going to take them more seriously as well. I think that was more of a major outlier than anything else. Vermont's first loss, the only loss they had to NJIT this year, the one at home. Vermont was a 13.5-point favorite in that game, and they're actually not as big of a favorite this time. NJIT hit a large percentage of their threes in the game. It really wasn't that misleading of a result, though. I mean, Vermont did have more field goal attempts in the game. The game was actually close statistically, so I'll give it to NJIT for that. But I think Vermont is going to show up with a better effort this time. They are actually now up to the same favorite price here, 13.5. 62% of tickets are on NJIT. The public wants NJIT, I guess, if they're playing this game. I would not. 87% of the cash on Vermont. I would probably actually lay it with Vermont here, but The total is pretty low in the 130s, so there's certainly a distinct possibility that Vermont wins this game and doesn't cover. I highly doubt that they lose. So, those are my thoughts on that. That game is at Vermont, like I said. All right. Then we have, what else do we have here? All right, that was the America East. Conference USA begins as well. Missouri State playing FIU. I think Conference USA has 2 games today, I think. This is the 8 versus 9 matchup. These teams split the season series with the home team winning each game. The games were both fairly close. This is a close matchup, too. Missouri State finished the season with a loss to a pretty underrated Middle Tennessee team. FIU finished with a pretty good win. They blew out Western Kentucky, actually. And most recently, they did beat Missouri State at home. This game will not be at home for them. This game is going to be in, where are these games being played again? I forget already. Huntsville, Alabama. All the money looks like it's coming in on Missouri State in this one, man. I don't really have a strong opinion on this one, but the market read is really, really indicating on Missouri State. They flipped from a 1-point dog to a 1.5-point favorite. FIU, 82% of the tickets on them, 85% of the cash on Missouri State. I'm not going to disagree. I mean, people did see FIU almost beat Liberty recently, and they might put some weight into that effort and whatever. It's definitely a close matchup, though. Like, this game could go either way, but the money is all saying Missouri State here. One thing that I don't love about Missouri State, though, is they're pretty new to this conference. They switched over from the Missouri Valley, so they're not really used to playing in this particular tournament, so that might be a little bit of an issue for them. But the money is all coming in on Missouri State, so I guess if I was going to play that game, I would moneyline Missouri State probably in that one. Then the other game in that conference is New Mexico State and Jacksonville State, which I think is the 10 versus 7 matchup. But New Mexico State actually is the favorite. And I've been telling you, they're really underrated. Like, they've been one of the unluckiest teams in KenPom this year. The problem is they commit way too many fouls, dude, and it's not stopping. Like, throughout a huge chunk of the season, I was like, that's a statistical outlier. Like, that can't keep continuing. And it has. They keep losing the free throw battle constantly. Like, they're one of the worst. I think they might be the worst team in the country in free throw disparity. And at some point, I was like, that's going to turn around, but it just hasn't happened. New Mexico State did finish the season with 2 wins. One of them was against Jacksonville State. They did actually beat them both games this year by 9 on the road and by 2 at home. But I think New Mexico State is the better team. Now, I know there is one of those, kind of zigzag setups here where they did just beat Jacksonville State not that long ago. So Jacksonville State might make the adjustments here. New Mexico State did finish on 2 straight wins, so that momentum might get a little bit disrupted, whereas Jacksonville State only finished by barely getting by UTEP, who I believe didn't even make the conference tournament. So they finished the season on a lower note, so they might show up harder for this game. New Mexico State is a 1-point favorite, and they are a favorite for a reason. I usually like the underseeded team being favored. That's the way that I look usually, because when the seeding doesn't align with the odds makers, you got to listen to what the odds makers are telling you, because they're the ones that have money on it. The seeding is just based off of what happened during the season, which can be misleading. But the money looks like it is kind of coming in on Jacksonville State. 75% of tickets, 93% of the cash on Jacksonville State. I think I probably will agree with Jacksonville State slightly. The venue is actually helpful because Jacksonville State, they are actually in Alabama, believe it or not. They're not Jacksonville, Florida. They're located in Jacksonville, Alabama. So the location is actually more helpful to them. And New Mexico State, I don't know when they moved over to this conference, but I don't think it was that long ago because they used to be in the WAC. So I don't know, man. There are some reasons to maybe lean towards Jacksonville State in that one. That one is not one that's really on my radar or anything, though. I mean, I look at every single game to try to find, the spots that I like and whatever. CBS Sports at 7 p.m. We will have an auto bid clinched in the Colonial. I'm still refusing to call it the Coastal. The 4 versus 3 seeds got into the final here between Monmouth and Hofstra. I've showed you the power ratings. So power ratings-wise, Hofstra is the best team in this conference, and they will be a favorite in this game. Monmouth is a decent defense at the very least, though. Monmouth beat Campbell yesterday to get here. They played 2 games in the tournament. Hofstra, I believe, has also played 2 games in the tournament, and Hofstra did not look good. They really almost lost that game after they did look good in their win over William and Mary. Last night, they almost lost to Towson. Towson is a much better defense than William and Mary is. Towson gave Hofstra some issues, man, and one of Hofstra's best players, I want to say Cruz is his name. I was watching the end of that game. He fouled out towards the end of regulation. I think the game went into overtime, too. So Hofstra did escape in that game. And a lot of times when a favorite escapes, they were like a 4.5-point favorite in that game. I like it better when it's a big favorite that escapes, but Hofstra was a favorite that escaped in that game, and a lot of times you'll see a better effort out of them the next time. Now, the problem is Hofstra might be a little bit more tired because they played the later game than Monmouth did yesterday, and they played a tougher game. So those are kind of the issues with Hofstra here coming into this one. Monmouth, played earlier in the day and didn't have to play in overtime. But again, Hofstra, people are not going to give them that much credit for that win. I don't think, they almost lost to the 7 seed. So, that's not going to inspire confidence in the public, let's just say. And they might be a little bit more impressed by Monmouth beating a Campbell team that took out the 1 seed. Campbell had taken out UNC Wilmington in the prior game that they had. So, that Monmouth win, I guess, looks a little bit better in some ways. The money looks like it is coming in on Monmouth, though. Hofstra down from 5.5 to 4.5 here. The total is low. 75% of tickets, 81% of the cash coming in on Monmouth. So the money is indicating on Monmouth. I think an under might be worth a look here because these championship games, a lot of times you see real focus on defense. But the problem is Hofstra, their legs might be a little bit tired, which might affect the defense after, having to go into overtime late last night. So I would worry about that a little bit too. The total in the 130s, but I could definitely see this being a lower scoring game. KenPom has Hofstra in the top 100 defensively. Monmouth is just outside the top 100, so both teams are pretty good on defense. Hofstra is still the better team, though, and they are the more balanced team. I still think Hofstra should win this game, but the money is indicating on taking the points with Monmouth. Could be a close one, man. I think Hofstra will win the game, and if Monmouth wins, it's going to weaken the tournament field even more here. So we'll see what happens, because Hofstra is a top 100 KenPom team. Monmouth is not. Monmouth is, probably closer to the 150s, I think. I just showed it. I forget what we have. 179. That's way, way worse. But the setup could be better for Hofstra here. It's not particularly great for Hofstra. The one good thing, though, is that because their best player there or whatever fouled out and didn't play the overtime, he's going to be a little bit less tired in this one. So there is that at least. All right. We got the Southland Conference going on at night. ESPNU, I think, has both of these games. The top 2 seeds jump into the fray here now, but they haven't played yet in this tournament. So this tournament being played in Lake Charles, Louisiana. So the teams that played yesterday might have a little bit of an advantage here because they got a game under their belt. Texas A&M Corpus Christi beat New Orleans yesterday. A pretty easy win for them, and they played the earlier of the 2 games as well. So they might show up with some focus here. They did lose both regular season games to Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin is definitely the better team here, but A&M-CC, at least they got a game out of the way yesterday, so now they're used to the venue. Easy win. You get settled. You don't have the nerves now. So there is a little bit of an advantage to them for that reason. Stephen F. Austin finished the season with 2 wins in a row. So, that momentum might stall out a little bit. They were definitely hot down the stretch, of course, because they only had a couple of conference losses overall. Stephen F. Austin obviously is going to be a big favorite here. Not as big as you might think, though, 6.5, and they're really public. 94% of tickets, 96% of the cash, it looks like for now. But I would probably lean towards taking the points with A&M-CC, man. Austin should win the game, but, yeah, I don't know. The odds makers are telling you something. It looks pretty easy to lay the 6.5 in that one. So I would not do it because when things look too easy, a lot of times they are. The total is quite low, and it's gone down into the very low 130s. So that's what's going on in that game. The other game, of course, features the team that I think is the best team in the conference, McNeese. They jump in, but they have a similar issue to CUNF Austin in that They haven't played since the end of the regular season as well, so their momentum could be disrupted. They won 8 games in a row to finish the season, so that momentum could be stalled out. They're playing Rio Grande Valley, who, believe it or not, beat them once this year at Rio Grande. McNeese did get revenge and beat them at home, but only by 7. So Rio Grande Valley has given McNeese problems, and it's Rio Grande Valley. They shoot a lot of threes and they defend the three well. They actually didn't hit that many of their threes in the game against McNeese. McNeese was the better team in this game. They did win, but McNeese got to the free throw line a lot more, so they had that disparity helping them out there a little bit. The game was, it was a little bit closer than it looked. So, McNeese, they haven't been that great against Rio Grande Valley, but maybe they'll turn it on a little bit, maybe because they'll take Rio Grande Valley, super seriously this time. The other thing for McNeese here is that this game is being played in their home city. It might even be in their home arena, to be honest. These games, for some reason, they're in Lake Charles, and that's where McNeese is, I'm pretty sure. So they have like a home court advantage in this game, which is kind of unfair, but I'm fine with it when McNeese is actually the best team in the conference. Power ratings-wise, they are. So, it's a little bit of a difficult call. McNeese does like to slow the game way down. They have the longest opponent possession time in the entire country. They force opponents to, really try, they really force opponents to try to find a good shot or force them into situations where they can't even find one. And McNeese is also going to play aggressively on defense and try to turn you over. McNeese is an 8-point favorite in this one. 60% of tickets on Rio Grande Valley, which I find that hard to believe that the public wouldn't be on McNeese here. 74% of the cash on McNeese. I still think I would lean towards taking the points with Rio Grande Valley in this one, though. But the money is saying lay it with McNeese. I don't quite agree with that, but there might be some line value there because I think when McNeese played them at home, I think they were like an 11.5-point favorite. But even if this game is at their home arena, it's not entirely a home game because it is a conference tournament game. So Rio Grande Valley's crowd will probably still show up for it, coming up from wherever the hell they are, somewhere in South Texas on the Rio Grande. All right. What other games we got? Next up is my best bet, and it's an ESPN2 game, and it is in a conference final that is somewhat meaningless for one team. So let's go to the best bets here. If you've listened to me, over the last few days, you know what this play is. My only play in college basketball, we're going to take Mercyhurst +6. Now, they're at Long Island. The game is at Long Island, so they do have a home court advantage here. And I know Long Island, they were a bigger favorite than this when they played at home against Mercyhurst earlier this year. They were an 8-point favorite. So, line value-wise, it's a little bit questionable here. I would much rather be taking at least 7 on this. We're not going to get it, though. But I still like this because I think the situation is just really strong, and the money is still agreeing with me. Long Island did open 7 very briefly. I never saw it. It's 5.5 or 6 right now. I would still do it. 65% of the tickets on Long Island, 66% of the cash on Mercyhurst. Money coming in on Mercyhurst. It looks like it's going to be an ugly, low-scoring game, as usual in this conference. 136.5 is the total. Now, we look at what these teams did during the regular season. Mercyhurst covered this number both times. Mercyhurst lost by 2 at Long Island, and you might say, well, that means Long Island will take them seriously here. Maybe, but the way this situation sets up, there's a huge motivational disparity here, which I'm going to talk about in a second. This is one of these rare scenarios where I make this an auto play, and I'll tell you about why that is in a minute. I think it's even greater when it's an underdog, because usually the last couple of times this has happened, it's been like a favorite. This time it's an underdog, so I'm like, hell yeah. Anyway, Long Island, they only won by 2 against Mercyhurst at home, and they actually lost at Mercyhurst by 8. And I dug into those box scores, and they weren't misleading results. Like, Mercyhurst played well both times against Long Island. Long Island did not, if you look at the stat sheet, Long Island was not, the significantly better team or anything like that. The teams played really close in those games. So, I like all of that. I like the fact that the game at Long Island was really slow. But the main thing that I like about this is that if you're unaware, even though this is the conference final, Long Island is already in the NCAA tournament after beating Wagner, because Mercyhurst, along with Lemoyne in this conference, are ineligible for the tournament because they're still transitioning up to Division I from Division II. So Long Island, that was basically the de facto conference final, and unfortunately my play lost by a half point in that one, and Long Island actually covered all the lower numbers in that game, and I wound up stuck with a bad number there. I'm pissed, but whatever. Long Island celebrated after that win, man. That was their game. They won. They got into the NCAA tournament. They're going to be headed to one of the 16 seed play-ins probably. So this game doesn't have much meaning to Long Island other than the fact that they get to win the conference in name only, you know what I mean? And you're asking them to lay points in a situation like that where they're already going to be looking ahead to the tournament, man. Like, they're potentially going to be playing, like a week from now, basically. So I think they're already looking ahead to that. And for Mercyhurst, this is their last game, unless they get, I don't even think they're going to be eligible because they're in transition. I think that means they're not eligible for the other tournaments either, like the CIT, the CBI, they're not going to be in the college basketball crown because that usually has like the bigger conference teams in it. And then the NIT has kind of gone to, because the crown took that over, the NIT now has lesser teams in it. But I don't even think Mercyhurst is, I don't know if they're eligible for those or not. It's possible they might be if they win this game, but that just means Mercyhurst has more of a reason to want to try to win this game, right? Because if they're eligible for any of those extra tournaments and they need to win this game to get into them, they'll be motivated for that reason if they want to play some more games. And I think they want to just prove something, you know what I mean? Like, if this is their last game of the season and they're still ineligible, they might want to say, hey, fuck that. We're good enough to be the winners of this conference. We should be the team in the tournament, you know what I mean? So I think you will absolutely get an effort out of them here. And they didn't look particularly great in their win over Stonehill. I watched the end of that game. It was a close game. So, for all those reasons, yeah, we're going to do it, man. We have this ineligibility situation here where Long Island already has the tournament bid. So we're taking Mercyhurst plus the points against them here. The last time I did this, it was Merrimack was in this situation, I think 2 years ago, when they were still in this conference. But they were a home favorite in that game. So that was one where I was like, should I money line it? Should I lay the spread? And I think I laid the spread, and I think it pushed. I think it was -3, and I think it pushed, if I'm not mistaken. So that kind of pissed me off. And money line would have won. And then the other time I remember this happening recently was Bellarmine against Jacksonville State or something like that. Back with I think Jacksonville State was still in the A-Sun at the time. I don't know if that was the A-Sun or if Bellarmine was in CUSA. I mean, actually, I think Bellarmine might have been in CUSA. I forget. These teams keep moving conferences. I don't remember, but I do remember Bellarmine was the team that was ineligible at the time, and they were like hosting a game where the other team had already clinched. So I'm like, you got to play Bellarmine here, and I think that was a winner as well. So that's what we're doing here. I think this situation has come up maybe 3 times over the last 5 or 6 years, and I don't remember what the other one was, but yeah, this is one where you're getting this team as a bigger underdog than usual. Like, I think those 2 scenarios I just mentioned, the team was a favorite both times. This time you're getting them as an underdog. Yeah, let's do it. Mercyhurst is the play there. All right. Not to be confused with Detroit Mercy, who I'm very pissed about, who are playing against Wright State in the Horizon Final on ESPN. So whoever wins this game will get a tournament bid. Wright State is a significantly better team here, man. Like, according to KenPom and all the metrics, they're way higher in KenPom than Detroit Mercy is. I don't know how Detroit Mercy keeps doing this. I mean, they got hot at the right time, I guess. They just upset Robert Morris, who I think was the highest KenPom rated team in the conference. Wright State, I think, is second, even though they are the 1 seed. Detroit Mercy, I mean, I heard that they had not even made it to this stage of the tournament. Like, they hadn't made it to Indianapolis for like a decade. So I guess good for Detroit Mercy for being able to do that. This will be sponsored by Barbasol again. So again, Unfortunately, I shaved yesterday, though, so I'm not shaving during this game. Wright State, I thought they were up against it in that spot last night, man, because Wright State had been off for a week, and Northern Kentucky had gotten a game under their belt in Indianapolis already. I thought Northern Kentucky was going to win that game, and it was close for a while, but then Wright State pulled away. Now, the problem, Wright State looked really good in that game, winning and scoring over 100 points. That's going to impress people. Wright State definitely could score. But, that might impress people too much coming into this game. So looking at the market in this game, Wright State is a 4.5-point favorite. They are getting the money. 75% of tickets, 90% of the cash on them. The money is saying Wright State here. I think I'll slightly agree with it just because usually the cream does rise in these conference finals, and usually the better team does win out when there's like a significant gap between the two. But Wright State actually lost at home to Detroit Mercy the last time they played. Looking into the box score here, it wasn't really that misleading either. It was actually a pretty close game, and Detroit Mercy, they out-rebounded Wright State both times they played this year, so that does worry me. And Wright State had way more free throws in that game, too, so that worries me as well. And the fact that they still didn't even win, that worries me. Wright State was an 11.5-point favorite in that game, though. So the fact that they were 11.5 at home, really not that long ago, and now on a neutral, they're 4.5. That line does seem low at 4.5. So it does seem like there is some line value on Wright State, given that huge jump there. Wright State only won by 2, by the way, at Detroit Mercy. So Wright State never covered this, even a 4.5 number against them either time. And like I said, Detroit Mercy was the better rebounding team in both games. I don't have much else to say about this, but yeah, Detroit Mercy also had more possessions in that first game, the game at home, although Wright State came away with the win in that one. But the money in that one is saying Wright State, and again, I think it's just because the number looks low. I think in that game at Detroit, I think they were actually favored by more than that. So after Wright State didn't do well against Detroit both times, man, and the fact that Wright State did get upset by them as a huge favorite at home, I think Wright State might at least take them way more seriously this time, especially now that this is the championship game. So I'll still agree with Wright State, but I don't really love it, man. All right. What else we got left? I think we're done with the big conferences here. I talked about all those games already. We have the West Coast Conference Final at 9 p.m. I thought they waited. Usually I thought they got to the final and then they delayed it until like Saturday, but I guess they're not doing that, or Friday maybe. They're not doing that this time, though. They're playing it right away in Las Vegas at the Orleans. It's going to be Santa Clara and Gonzaga. Santa Clara, nice win last night from them, man. That might be enough to put them like almost assure them a tournament spot, man. Nice win for them over St. Mary's. That was the win that I gave out on the show yesterday. Now they got to play Gonzaga, and they did lose both games to Gonzaga this year. They lost by 8 at home, and they lost by 12 on the road. So they didn't really get they didn't get blown out or embarrassed or anything like that, but they were asking Santa Clara to play in a situation that they're really not used to, because this conference final is almost always Gonzaga, St. Mary's, you know what I mean? Now Santa Clara's in here. They just pulled off a huge win that might be enough to get them in the tournament. Nice upset. They played the later game last night, too. And meanwhile, Gonzaga, they didn't look good yesterday. I mean, that final score was bad against Oregon State, but they were never in danger of losing that game. I think Gonzaga just barely showed up in the game. They were like, whatever, we can beat this team. They didn't even come close to covering, which I told you I didn't think they were going to cover. They were like a 20-point favorite. Really, really bad-looking final score. Gonzaga only scoring 65 points in the game. But again, I just don't think they put in a ton of effort in that one. So I do think this game sets up a lot better for Gonzaga here. I think they're going to win the conference tournament again. They're in this game every year, and I think they win it more often than they don't. So they're used to it. Happens every year. I would probably lay the points with Gonzaga on this one, man. I mean, they really didn't look good last night, so people might even hesitate to do so. And Santa Clara is this nice story, you know. Santa Clara looked like the better team last night over Gonzaga, really. But again, you can't put all that weight into one game, especially when you pretty much know Gonzaga just didn't even give a shit about that game. And they just looked like they wanted the game to end by the end of it. Like, whatever, let's move on. Gonzaga was 6.5 with juice. It looks like at the opener. It's now 7.5. 70% of tickets, 91% of the cash on Gonzaga. Yeah, I mean, the money is coming in Gonzaga. I agree with it. I would lay the points with them in this one after last night. Last night makes that look a little bit more difficult to do. Now, I believe Gonzaga's still without Braden Huff here, who really does matter for them. Yeah, he's still out, so, I don't know if and when he's ever even coming back, but Gonzaga definitely takes a hit with him not in there. So, as I mentioned last night, we will see, man. But, yeah, I think Gonzaga will get it done yet again in that one there. I was going to look at what was the number when Gonzaga played most recently against Santa Clara. Let me see. This was at Santa Clara. Gonzaga were 4.5-point favorites, so 7.5 would be about right for a neutral site game based on that. If you think Santa Clara has about 3 for home court, which I think is probably about right. All right, then we got the MAAC final in Atlantic City, New Jersey. So another auto bid will get clinched to the tournament in this game between Sienna and Merrimack. Zach, what's up? I told you Santa Clara was going to win that game outright, man. All right, this game, I told you that Sienna was a decent look in the futures market and whatever because their path was pretty easy, but they're also a pretty good team, man. But they really have not been tested in this tournament. They only had to beat Mount St. Mary's and then Fairfield, who had knocked out St. Peter's, who I thought was an overrated team though. But Sienna, they've done what they're supposed to do. They've done what they were supposed to do, I should say. They're in the final here now. Both of these teams, I think, had yesterday off, so the rest is about the same here. Merrimack, more impressive win over Marist. Marist is a legit team. They're a very good defense. Merrimack had it easy in the prior game, though, against a pretty bad Sacred Heart team. Beating Marist is pretty impressive, though. I know it doesn't look like a good win, 58-57. Marist is a very, very good defensive team, though, in this conference. So, and really even overall, Marist is quite good on the defensive side. Merrimack still got the job done, but they are coming off kind of a tougher game, which maybe that'll hurt them a little bit. Now, these teams did play not that long ago, and Merrimack won the game at home, but they won it in overtime, and Sienna was winning that game outright for more than half of the game, and Sienna was actually the better team in this game in a lot of ways. They were winning for 53% of the game. They out-rebounded Merrimack in the game. Merrimack had a weird outlier here where they hit 100% of their free throws. They were 26 for 26. Now, I know Merrimack, I think they're a pretty decent free throw shooting team, but 100% with 26 attempts is ridiculous. That's not going to happen again. So expect some regression there. And Merrimack did have a +6 3-point advantage there, or I should say plus 18-point advantage from behind the arc there. Merrimack does take a lot of threes. That's what they do. Sienna doesn't do that. Sienna plays, in the paint and whatever. But still, that kind of, those were somewhat outliers here. Merrimack shooting 44% from 3. They're not going to do that in every game either. So some indicators, in this game indicate that this game wasn't what it looked like. And Sienna definitely could have and maybe should have won that game at Merrimack. These teams also played at Sienna, and Merrimack won that game too by 4 points earlier in the season. Sienna was actually a 5.5-point favorite in that game. So back then, the odds makers had Sienna as the slightly better team, and now they don't. But I think the line might have shifted too much, man, in favor of Merrimack here. Look at this game. Sienna dominated in the paint again in this game, and I like dominant paint teams. They had a +14 rebounding edge in the game. Merrimack, again, just hit a large percentage of their threes. That's what they do. It happened in both games. And Sienna hardly went to the free throw line at all, even though they were at home. So even though Merrimack basically led the game wire to wire, I don't know that game was really what it appeared to be either. And again, Sienna was favored by 5.5. Merrimack was a 3.5-point favorite when they were at home not that long ago. This game's on ESPN2, by the way. But now Merrimack is laying 4 points on a neutral. So they're actually laying more points than they were at home a couple weeks ago against Sienna. That seems ridiculous to me. I would take the points with Sienna here. 79% of tickets, 91% of the cash on Sienna. The total is really low at 124. It's dropped 8 points already. A lot of money coming in on the under. I wouldn't really disagree with the under, but I wouldn't want to play it 8 points lower than where it opened. I think the value's all gone from that number, especially, points are at a premium when it's that low. I think it will be a low-scoring game, though, which also does help the underdog. I think if you're going to play this game, grabbing the points with Sienna does make sense here. That's how I would look at that game. All right. And then we have the Big Sky has their semifinals, I believe, going on. And then I will have to go over to NHL and NBA. I'm going to take a break and then come back because there are a lot of games in the NHL and NBA as well. I have one play in each. Montana and Portland State are playing. These games are all in Boise, Idaho, on ESPNU and ESPN2 for these two games, respectively. Montana got the nice win last night, revenge win over Northern Colorado, even though I think Northern Colorado is the better team. The game got close at the end, but Montana did have the upper hand in that game for most of it. Now they got to play Portland State. Montana actually beat Portland State both times this year, by 4 on the road and by 6 at home. So Montana, I looked into those box scores, and it wasn't really that misleading. Montana does seem to match up decently against Portland State. Portland State, they are the best defense in this conference. They're coming off beating Idaho State. Now, here's the thing. People might look and say, oh, well, I don't want Montana because Montana played last night, right? So, yeah, Montana, they have like a rest disadvantage because they played last night. But I think the fact that Portland State, I don't know, man. Well, I guess because they only had one day off, I guess that is kind of an edge. I was going to say maybe their momentum stalls out a little bit, but I guess because they only had one day off, I guess that is not really that unhelpful to them. But yes, Montana played last night. Portland State had last night off. So what do we do with this game? Well, I'm going to say stay away from it, but the money is all coming in on Montana here, man. Portland State, 2.5-point favorite. 59% of the tickets on them. 91% of the cash on Montana, though. So the money is saying Montana in this one. I think they do match up decently against Portland State. Portland State, again, they are the better defense, but I don't know. For whatever reason, it seems like they just don't do well against Montana specifically. Ken Bum has Montana. They're better on defense than offense as well. They're kind of a lucky team, though. He has Portland State about 40 ranking spots ahead of them. They're a lucky team as well. They're way better on defense, but they're not a good offense, Portland State. So, I don't know. They're kind of a weird mix, and they don't play that slow either, so kind of weird. And then in the late game on ESPN2, Idaho playing against Eastern Washington. Idaho also had yesterday off, so I think that's probably an advantage to Idaho, to be honest. But they are coming off beating Montana State, who's the highest power-rated team, KenPom-wise, in the conference. That was a pretty big win for Idaho, but they had yesterday off. I think they will show up for a game against Eastern Washington. Believe it or not, they beat Eastern Washington both times this year. Both games are close, winning by 3 and 4. Eastern Washington has been the hottest team in the conference pretty much, but their only loss recently was to Idaho. It was the final regular season game, I believe. Well, yeah, because otherwise one of the teams would be eliminated from the tournament. Eastern Washington won last night against Weber State. It was a pretty close call against Weber. Now, Eastern Washington does have to turn around and play again after playing late last night. Idaho had the day off. They're playing in Boise, which, if any team has a location edge in this tournament, it is probably Idaho because I think they are located the closest to where this tournament is being played. And I do think Idaho is an under-the-radar team. I think they're actually like the 4th or 5th best team in this conference. And the odds makers are telling you they're better than Eastern Washington, even though they're the 7 seed, and Eastern Washington's the 3. And by the way, Montana, I think, is like the 5, or no, the 4, I guess, and Portland State's the 1. But yeah, the 7 being favored over the 3 is very interesting. Now, Eastern Washington, the one thing they have in their back pocket is the reason why their record overall looks really bad is because they played a really difficult out-of-conference schedule, but that might not be enough. I mean, Northern Colorado did as well, and they lost last night. Idaho's a 1.5-point favorite. They're getting all the money, it looks like. 60% of tickets on Eastern Washington, 66% of the cash on Idaho. So the money is indicating on Idaho, and I'm not going to disagree. I would lean to Idaho as well here, man. I'm leaning to both teams that won both regular season matchups, even though I know it's difficult to beat a team 3 times. Well, when you've already done it twice, that means you just have to win one more game. And the reason why it's difficult is, yes, the other team will make adjustments to what went wrong in those first 2 games. You know what I mean? Whereas the team that won might not have the adjustments to make. But sometimes the team just is the better team or matches up better against that team. You know what I mean? So those are my thoughts on those games. I will be right back, and then we'll talk about this massive NHL board here. I have a few opinions here. One rises to the level of a play for me. I'll be right back. All right, NHL, let's do it, man. We have 13 games. I think the NHL doing these like Super Tuesdays or whatever. A lot of games on the board. They're all in the evening. The LA Kings are at Boston. Seems like the Kings like keep coming into Boston and beating my Boston Bruins, though. Kings did play in overtime last night, though, at Columbus, so they're on a back-to-back, and they have to go to Boston now, so that's not exactly the greatest setup for them here. For the Bruins here, they lost to Pittsburgh in overtime, I think, 2 nights ago, so they were off yesterday, coming back home, only from a single game on the road, though, so not returning home for a road trip or anything. Korpisalo was in net in that one. He hasn't been that good, but it'll be Swayman, I assume, back in net for the Bruins this time, which is part of the reason why they're favored by as much as they are. Well, that plus the rest advantage here. But the money is somewhat disagreeing with the Bruins here. They're down from minus 155 to minus 152 on the money line. 75% of the tickets, only 74% of the cash on the Bruins. So the money is somewhat fading the Bruins here. I kind of disagree. I would kind of lean to the Bruins in this one. But, I mean, it's probably about the price, because a lot of times the team at the rest disadvantage a lot of times will be undervalued in the market just because of the rest disadvantage. But I still don't like that. I mean, the team went into overtime last night. I don't like that. Plus, they have to travel from Columbus to Boston. I don't know. Hopefully, for my sake, the Bruins win because they're my team. But that's not a game I want to touch at all. San Jose at Buffalo. I do have an opinion on this one. This one was close to being a play for me. San Jose, they're coming off 2 overtime games. They lost in overtime to the Islanders. Now, the one thing that worries me about San Jose, because I like San Jose in this game, the one thing that kind of worries me is that was a pretty big game. The Islanders, you know, they have a good record at least. So San Jose is coming off of that. But pretty much everything else I like about San Jose here. They're starting a road trip. They have 2 days off. So having a couple of days off can help them overcome that overtime loss. You know, they could break that losing momentum with the time off. That's helpful when you have a couple of losses in a row. And starting a road trip, you're usually really focused to start the road trip, especially because they're playing a really hot Buffalo team that has a really good record. So you will get effort out of San Jose, I would have to imagine here. Buffalo is staying at home off of just an absurd game where they beat Tampa Bay 8-7 on Sunday, which is one of the highest scoring games probably in NHL history. Ridiculous game where neither team could stop each other. Absolutely crazy. And Tampa Bay is a really good team too, so that was a huge win for Buffalo. They might not have a whole lot left in the tank after that or really pay that much attention to San Jose. So I like San Jose in this game. Really close to being a play for me. You're going to get them as a big underdog, too. Buffalo minus 200. 91% of the tickets, only 80% of the cash on them. Yeah, I would grab a puck line probably with San Jose. I don't know what the price you can get on that is. Sometimes I recommend like finding a +1 puck line or splitting it to make your own +1. Let me see, what's the price on San Jose here? Because I like them. I mean, this one is very close to a play for me. You can get San Jose. Yeah, it would be a split puck line, money line situation probably. You can get them at +1.5 at about -145. I would put like 60% of the bet on that, and then the rest of it on the +170 money line probably is what I would do in that one, something like that. But yeah, that one is pretty close to a play for me, man. And then the next one also is I like Toronto against Montreal here as well. This would be a split puck line situation as well. Or you could just go right money line, you know what I mean? You could put less money on the money line to try to win more, you know what I mean? Like every one of my bets typically is usually to try to win 300. So like on the money line, I would put less money on it so that the win would be 300, if that makes sense, if I did it money line only. Toronto's lost a bunch of games in a row, 7 in a row. Nobody's going to want this Toronto team. They haven't won since before the Olympic break. But, you know, they played some good teams in the mix here. They just lost to Tampa Bay. They've had 2 days off. And if anything's going to help, you know, having a couple of days off to break that losing momentum, they're going to a team they'll probably be focused on, Montreal, one of their primary rivals. It's an original 6 matchup here, and the original 6 Canada matchup, basically. Montreal also has been a pretty good team this year. Montreal is returning home from a road trip where they've been on the road for basically a week. They went to the Pacific Coast. You know, I talk about this. When a team returns home from a road trip, a lot of times they will not be focused, and they'll overlook their opponent. They've had 2 days off, but I don't think that's that helpful when you're returning home from a road trip, because I think it helps you like settle back in at home. You got stuff to do at home. You know, these guys have families, whatever, so that can become a distraction. Toronto's been playing awful, so they could easily overlook Toronto. They got an Ottawa team that's been playing a bit better on deck tomorrow. So, yeah, I like Toronto in this one, man. Money seems to be agreeing with me on this one, too. Montreal, 93% of tickets, only 61% of the cash on them. They're down from -170 to -165 here. So the money has agreed with me on that one as well and faded Montreal here. I think I like this one better than the San Jose one. But I like, you know, both. I lean towards both pretty strongly. So I like both of those. I know neither of them are my play, which seems a little bit crazy. But, yeah, I mean, the return home spot, I think, is like one of the strongest angles that you have. You know what I mean? But yeah, I like Toronto there. I would probably recommend doing a split bet there, partially puck line, partially money line. Columbus is at Tampa Bay. Columbus, they did lose last night in overtime, like I said, to the Kings. By the way, I will say the Kings are better on the road than they are at home, so that does help the Kings today in the game against the Bruins. Columbus lost that game at home yesterday. Now they got to go on the road to play Tampa Bay. It's a game they should get up for, but on a back-to-back, that makes it a little bit of a difficult situation. For Tampa Bay, they haven't been playing well recently. They were the loser in that game against Buffalo, losing 8-7, and that's a crazy game to have to come off of, man. And they're returning home from a road trip, so that makes it worse. They've been on the road for a week. They went to Minnesota, Winnipeg, Toronto, Buffalo. Now they're coming back to Florida. They got to play this Columbus team that's not great. And then they got Detroit and Carolina on deck, which I think they might even look ahead to those games, even though I think Columbus actually has a good record right now, though. So, I mean, I guess there's the chance they don't overlook Columbus for that reason. But I like Columbus in this game. This is a bad spot for Tampa Bay. The return home spot, you got stuff to do when you come back home. 3rd game in 4 days, 4th game in 6 days, 5th and 8, I believe, as well, all in different cities. That's not easy either. With a potential look ahead here, coming off a ridiculous game. The couple of things that are good for Tampa, one is that Vasilevsky will be back in net, and he's still their better goalie, even though he hasn't looked good recently. And Columbus is on the back-to-back with travel, which makes it a bit difficult, although they are starting a road trip, and a lot of times teams will be focused to start the road trip, so at least they have that in their pocket. I lean to Columbus in this one. This one has not made my card, but I have an opinion on it at least. Tampa Bay down from -260 to -233. 93% of tickets, 98% of the cash on Tampa Bay. So the money for now seems to be indicating on Tampa Bay, sort of, but I don't think so because the line has already dropped on them. They're a public side. So it looks like reverse line movement in agreement with me. That's one where the price is so big on Tampa that a Columbus puck line might be like pretty close to like a minus 110 price in that one. Detroit at Florida. Interesting game here. Detroit having a good season. Florida not so much, but they're still the back-to-back returning champs. Detroit just beat New Jersey on Sunday. Highly doubt they're going to overlook Florida when Florida beat them in Detroit the game prior to that. So there is a quick revenge angle here, which does work somewhat well. And it's not necessarily because of revenge. It's more so that the team that won won't have any adjustments to make. You know what I mean? Because everything went well for them in that prior game. For Florida, they haven't played since then. So Florida won at Detroit, and that means Florida's returning home from a road trip that they've been on since Sunday the 1st. So I don't love that. Again, when teams return home from road trips, I think it's a bad spot. They actually have 3 days off, so they do have kind of a rest edge, and I guess it's good for Florida that they ended their losing streak. So sometimes when a team ends a losing streak, it will give them some newfound momentum. But still, they're returning home from a road trip. They just won at Detroit to finish the road trip. The extra time off, I think, actually kind of exacerbates the return home in a lot of cases because you get settled back in at home, and it can cause you to not be focused on the game even more so. So I do like Detroit in this one. Doesn't make my card, but yeah, I have a lot of opinions in hockey today, man. The money seems to agree. Florida down from minus 140 to minus 126. 71% of tickets and 85% of the cash on Detroit. So the money is agreeing with me on Detroit in that one. Calgary is at the Rangers. Calgary just took a really ugly 7-3 loss to Washington last night. So they're on a back-to-back, but I think the Rangers might be too. I got to make sure of that in a minute. But that was also a bad spot for Calgary because Calgary had pulled off a huge upset against Carolina the game before that. So they were definitely in a letdown spot. I considered giving out Washington yesterday as a play. I held off of it, but last night, Washington absolutely destroyed them. So maybe Calgary, bounces back here. We're looking at the Rangers being at home, man, and you know about the Rangers at home by now if you watch my show. The Rangers have the worst home record in the NHL. They're terrible at home. 8-15-6. Awful. Absolutely awful. And they're coming off a blowout win at Philadelphia last night. 6-2 with Shesterkin in net. They're better goalies, so Quick is probably going to be in net here. And looking at what the Rangers have done with Quick, they've lost 4 games in a row where he's been in net, so that's not great. He's been a good goaltender throughout his career, but he's kind of old now, and the spot's not good. It's the 3rd game in 4 days for the Rangers, all in different cities. They blow at home. They just had a huge win last night. Well, a win by a lot, I should say. Whereas you're looking at Calgary off an embarrassing game last night. I like Calgary in this game. The Rangers, the odds makers are telling you the Rangers aren't that good if they're only minus 126 at home against Calgary. And they're getting the public action. It looks like 97% of tickets, 99% of the cash. I like Calgary in that one. That's the way I would lean in that one. I don't think I have much else to say about that one, but Calgary would be the way I would lean there. Pittsburgh at Carolina. Pittsburgh just beat Boston, unfortunately. I think the Bruins had like a 3-0 lead in that game too, so that pisses me off even more. They lost in overtime, and I think the Bruins were never losing that game in regulation. Pittsburgh now starting a road trip against Carolina. I think they will show up for a game against Carolina. Carolina's a really good team. Carolina is returning home from a road trip. So another road trip return. It's surprising we have all these road trip returns, and I only have one play today in hockey. Only one made the cut, man. Carolina returning home. They lost to Calgary, though, in their last game, so that was a really ugly loss. But it's still a road trip return, and I think the gut instinct is, well, the team's going to do better back home. They're going to bounce back, right? But typically that doesn't happen. When you've been away for more than a week, Carolina had to go all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. Not a good spot for them, man. Like they're going to have to get settled back in at home. They do have a couple of days off, but it's a bad spot. I would like it better if they had a huge game on deck like Tampa Bay, but unfortunately they have St. Louis next. then Tampa Bay. But, yeah, I still lean to Pittsburgh in this game for sure. Carolina down from minus 235 to minus 200, 89% of tickets, 81% of the cash on them. So the money is agreeing with me on that one. It would be, again, probably a split puck line, money line situation there with Pittsburgh. Next up is the first TNT HBO Max True TV game of the night. Islanders at St. Louis. This is the game that I'm going with. Best bet, man. And, yeah, we're going to be on a road favorite. We're going to lay the price with the Islanders, minus 124. This is another road trip return spot, and it might be the worst one that's on the board today. St. Louis has been on the road since Sunday, March 1st. They went all the way to the Pacific. They had to go to Minnesota, Seattle, San Jose, Anaheim, and they swept the road trip. So they're looking really good right now. And I know the Islanders have a good record, but not only is St. Louis returning home from a road trip, they've been on the road for a while, and I talk about that, how you return home, it can completely stop your momentum. You got to get back to home life. It becomes a distraction. But they have a huge game on deck against Carolina, and they got Edmonton the day after that. So I think they might overlook the Islanders, even though the Islanders are having a decent season. Carolina's really good, and Edmonton is in St. Louis's conference. So those games might mean more than this one does. I think it's a bad spot. I think it's actually a sandwich spot, given that Carolina's on deck. And for the Islanders, they did just play in San Jose, I know. So they're having to travel across time zones here. But the Islanders, I think they're going to put in some effort, man, because they're only 1-2 on their road trip here. So I think they're going to show up for this one. And by the way, St. Louis is a bad team, and when bad teams return home from road trips, a lot of times they do even worse in that spot because it's a bad team in a bad spot. A lot of times they do really bad. So laying these small favorites in situations like this, a lot of times is a very good idea. The Islanders have had 2 days off, so they do have some rest here. They're traveling. I think they're going to put in an effort to try to split the road trip here, man. They did just beat San Jose to end a losing streak that they had here. I think you're going to see a better effort out of them here. I don't know who their goalie is going to be in this one. Don't think it's a big deal. It should probably be Sorokin again because he usually plays a bunch of games in a row, and they've had 2 days off, so you'll probably get the Islanders' primary goaltender here in this one. That's what we're going to go with. For St. Louis, I don't even care who's in net for them, to be honest. I really don't think Bennington is that good, man. We're going with the Islanders. They're about minus 121 right now, according to this screen. They're a little bit public, 84% of the tickets, but I think they're going to get the money as well. 99% of the cash for now. But, yeah, this is the one spot that actually was a sandwich spot out of all the games that I've talked about so far. So Islanders will be the play for me there. And the one where we weren't, jumping in on a puck line, fading like a huge favorite here. But I do like those situations too, though. We'll see how many of them work out. But I'm being really selective today. Vegas at Dallas is one of the better games of the day. Vegas not really having a great season right now, though. They got a lot of overtime losses, man. Vegas lost 2 games in a row at home, too, so it might be good for them to just go out on the road. You're going to get effort out of them in a game against Dallas, at least coming off a couple of losses. Dallas just beat Chicago, I believe, last night, I want to say. No, 2 nights ago. That's right. Chicago beat Utah last night. I got that game wrong. Made a big mistake there, but didn't give it out as a play or anything. But that's why I didn't feel strongly enough about it. Dallas did beat Chicago in their last game, although they barely escaped that game. But you can see why. Dallas was coming off a huge game against Colorado where they took Colorado into a shootout. So it was a bad spot for Dallas. In fact, I think I actually might have given out Chicago as a play in that one. Chicago could have won the game, but I think they at least covered. It was a plus 1.5 puck line for us there. DeSmith was in net in that one for Dallas. So Ottinger, who's their better goalie, will be back in net, presumably, for this one. It's a game that I don't want to touch at all, but I will lean to Vegas slightly here. And the money is agreeing with me. Dallas is up to minus 150, 92% of tickets on them, 51% of the cash on Vegas, though. You're getting a pretty good Vegas team in a spot where I think they will show up focused as an underdog here. So, yeah, I like Vegas in that one as a money line underdog. Utah at Minnesota. Utah played last night, like I said, but it was not a good result for them. They lost at Chicago. They're playing a third game in 4 days, though. Fourth and 6, fifth and 8, and a sixth game in 10 days, all in different cities, which is not easy to do at all. They're playing Minnesota, who they actually beat in Utah back before the road trip started on February 27th. So there is a little bit of a revenge angle for Minnesota here. Quick revenge or a quick adjustment for Minnesota. But Utah is coming off a bad game last night. So even though they're on the back-to-back, they'll use Vejmelka in net tonight. He's their better goalie. Vanacek was in net last night, the two Vs. So they will switch to a rested goalie who is their primary goalie tonight. So that's not horrible for Utah, at least. For Minnesota, they didn't play yesterday, but they're coming off a big game. They're returning home from a road trip. It was only Friday, Sunday, though. So not a long road trip return spot, but they still finished the road trip by playing Colorado. So in their last 3 games, they beat Tampa Bay, went on the road to beat Vegas, and then they almost beat Colorado on the road. Those are huge games for Minnesota, man. So they could possibly be in a hangover spot against Utah here. So even though they might not overlook them because Utah did beat them not that long ago, I would kind of lean to Utah in this game, man. Minnesota already dropped from minus 170 to minus 142, though. We don't see any percentages yet, but that's a crazy drop on the money line. I don't know why that happened. But, yeah, it would be, I guess, Utah money line in that one. That game is on Hulu. Anaheim at Winnipeg. Anaheim is a much better home team than road team. But Anaheim's coming off a really gross loss to St. Louis, 4-0. So, you know, that's usually you bounce back when you lose horribly at home like that and you get shut out at home. And starting a road trip, you're usually focused to start the road trip. So I think you will get a good effort out of Anaheim here. Winnipeg, these teams played each other not that long ago, too. Winnipeg lost at Anaheim, though, 5-4. So maybe, I guess, there's a little bit of a revenge angle for Winnipeg here. That game was on February 27th, an overtime game. Wasn't that long ago. Winnipeg's been going into overtime in virtually every game recently, which is crazy, including their most recent game, which was against Vancouver. And, you know, Winnipeg playing against Vancouver like that, not playing well, they should probably be in a focus spot here too, man. Having a game that wasn't good against Vancouver. You got a couple of days off here. Now, the days off might hurt their momentum a little bit because they won 3 games in a row, but that was a bad performance against a bad Vancouver team. And you can kind of see why, because Winnipeg had a huge win against Tampa the game before that. So I think both teams are in positive spots in this one. A lot of times when that's the case, the under can kind of be worth a look, especially if Winnipeg's going to have Hellebuck in net again, who is an elite goalie. Winnipeg's getting the money, 60% of tickets, 88% of the cash, and they're up from minus 125 to minus 135 here. I would kind of lean to Anaheim in this one, though, given what the spot looks like. But I think both teams should show up focused here. So, yeah, again, I think an under may be worth a consideration in that one. The rare under lean for me in hockey. Edmonton at Colorado is the other TNT, True TV, and HBO Max game. It's a pretty good game. Edmonton is coming off a win over Vegas, which is a big game. They're not going to overlook Colorado, but having to play Vegas, Colorado, and then they have to play Dallas. Playing all 3 of those teams 3 games in a row is not that easy to do. Colorado is coming off beating Minnesota, which was a decent win for them as well. They played their last 2 games into shootouts against Dallas on the road, then returned home, did it again against Minnesota. Got some quick revenge against Minnesota, too. So, you know, both teams are having to put in big efforts a couple of games in a row here. So I think that kind of balances out. The money is indicating on Edmonton in this one. Colorado down from minus 178 to minus 166. 73% of the tickets on them and 71% of the cash. So Colorado's a public side, but the money kind of indicating on Edmonton here. It's difficult, man. I guess I don't really have much of a reason to disagree with that. But I don't know. I never really loved just the style of Edmonton. You know what I mean? I think their goaltending is crap. They score. I don't like teams that score a lot and don't really play defense or goaltend. You know what I mean? The final game is Nashville at Seattle. Nashville is coming off almost beating Buffalo. That game, I think, it was within 1 goal, I think, really late in the game. They didn't almost beat them, but they were down. I think they were down They were down. No, wait. Maybe they did almost beat them. Hang on. Wait, what? They had cut it to 1 goal on a power play with like 4 minutes to go. So they were down 1 goal for the final 4 minutes of the game there. Still a tough game to come off of against Buffalo. Now they're having to go all the way to Seattle for this, which a lot of times that first game for like a more easterly team, having to play a late night 10 p.m. Out west, sometimes that will mess with that team's biological clock. So even though they've had a couple of days off, they probably traveled out there to try to get used to it. But I'm not sure I love the spot for Nashville here off of playing a big opponent, whereas Seattle, even though Seattle's not as good as their record might make it look, they're coming off a really ugly loss at home to Ottawa, 7-4. And they had kind of a bad loss prior to that to St. Louis at home as well. So I think you're going to get an effort out of Seattle here, even though they do have Colorado next. You can't keep losing at home like that, man. And that St. Louis one was when they were coming off a huge win over Carolina. So they were in a letdown spot there. But that last game they played, horrible loss at home to Ottawa. So I expect they will bounce back. They have 2 days off as well to break that losing momentum. So I would lean to Seattle in this game. They did drop from -120 to -108. Again, a lot of respect in the market for Nashville. And it can't happen every game, man. 83% of tickets, 85% of the cash on Nashville. I don't agree with it. Yeah, I would lean towards Seattle in that one. Oh, and I think that Chicago game that I mentioned was a win for us, by the way, on the puck line the other day, because I think it was a +1.5. I was thinking of the push that I had with Nashville and the other puck line that I gave out not that long ago. All right, so that's the hockey board for today. Gave out one play in hockey and a bunch of opinions. I guess I would order my opinions. The Islanders, obviously, because that's my one play. Then, I'm trying to remember what I even talked about here. Let me see. Probably Toronto would be next. Then, I did like, what was the other one that I liked? San Jose. That one would probably be next after that. Then probably Calgary. It would be that order, and then I don't really have a strong enough opinion on the rest of them. But that would probably be how I would order the strength of those. But don't put too much weight into that, man, because what do I know about weighing the strength of these? I'm more of a guy that's like, if it's good enough, it makes my card, and I pretty much play it for the same amount every time. All right, NBA. Man, a lot of games in the NBA today, too. I think 10, maybe 11. The first game up is Memphis and Philadelphia. Philadelphia is still a massively injured team. Edgecombe actually missed their game last night, too. He might be back tonight. They're still going to be without Maxey, Embiid, George, who's suspended. So you're looking at, a Philadelphia team that has basically nobody, although they might have Edgecombe back here, like I said. But Philadelphia, they had a big game last night against Cleveland, man, and now they're playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. I know that game wasn't close, but if they get Edgecombe back here, it's going to be kind of like a reverse injured player spot as well, where, you have to work him back into the lineup again and whatever, and they might not totally focus on Memphis because they do have Detroit on deck, which is a bigger game for them as well. So I would probably have to lean to Memphis in this one, even though I know Philly is a small favorite here because nobody is playing for them. Memphis is also on a back-to-back. That was a bad loss last night in Brooklyn, man. Now they're traveling from Brooklyn to Philadelphia. Memphis, they pretty much have been putting in effort in these games, though. I thought both teams were in bad spots last night, but I liked Memphis because I thought the spot was really bad for Brooklyn off that ridiculous win over Detroit. Didn't happen, but with both teams on back-to-backs, I prefer Memphis in this game off that bad loss last night to Brooklyn. The money appears to be agreeing with me pretty strongly. The Sixers are a 3-point favorite. 56% of the tickets on them. 96% of the cash on the Grizzlies, though. So the money is coming in on the Grizzlies. I agree with that. Detroit is at Brooklyn. And as I just said, Detroit just lost to Brooklyn 2 games ago. So I don't think Detroit is going to take them lightly this time. If that bad team went into your place and beat you at home, you're probably going to pay attention to them the next time. And I think it was some ridiculous comeback for Brooklyn in that game as well. So I think Detroit will be focused here, man. I know they're playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, fifth game in 8, and a sixth game in 10. all in different cities, and actually a 7th game in 11 days, too, with travel between all of them. So I know it's not easy. Detroit has no rest here, but they just lost by double digits at Miami. They're playing a Brooklyn team that just embarrassed them. I think you're going to get an effort out of Detroit in this one. Brooklyn played last night, so they have no rest here. They beat Memphis. It was a return home spot for them as well. They will get up for a game against Detroit, I would think, but with no rest here and with Detroit probably giving you an effort here, I would lay the points with Detroit in this one, man. NBA, you don't want to always avoid laying double digits on the road in the NBA, man. It's like the one sport where it kind of makes sense to do it sometimes, even though it's not really totally in my repertoire. Occasionally I do it. I'm not going to make this a play, but I would lean to laying the points with Detroit here. They're up to minus 15.5, though, so the money has come in on Detroit in agreement with me. 84% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them. I agree with that. Yeah, it was like a 20-point comeback. Yeah, I think after that happened, I expect Detroit will not overlook them this time, and I think Detroit wins the game pretty easily this time. Washington at Miami. The problem with Washington is how much effort are you going to get out of them, man. I think some of their guys came back who were injured, but they have not been looking good. They just got killed by New Orleans. Although I think you're occasionally going to get an effort out of teams like this. You got to figure out when it's going to happen. Will it happen after they lost by 20 to a not very good Pelican team? I don't know, man. They caught New Orleans in a bad spot, too, and they still got blown out. Like, New Orleans was in a bad spot in that game. I think it was a return home spot. So this Washington team, not impressive. I think they caught Utah in kind of a bad spot, too, and still didn't do well. So I can't do anything with Washington, but I don't think Miami's in a very good spot here. Miami's in a letdown spot. In fact, they just beat Detroit. That was a big game, like big win for Miami, beating Detroit. They do have Milwaukee next, which is a bigger game than Washington, at least, because it is still Giannis and whatever. So this is a bad spot for Miami. So there's no way that I could lay the points with Miami here. I would have to lean to the Wizards plus the points in this one. I can't do it. And it's a high total, probably because the Wizards are expected to put in no effort on defense again. 243 is a ridiculous total. And the money's coming in on the over. So, hey, when totals are, obscenely high, usually the odds makers are indicating something to you. So maybe you do want to look towards an over in this game. But, man, that total is crazy high. But the money looks like it is coming in on the over for what that's worth. You've lost about 1.5 on that, although a lot of points get scored in the NBA. Excuse me. 61% of the tickets are on the Heat, 59% of the cash on the Wizards. So the money is agreeing with the Wizards, but there's no way I could do that. Dallas at Atlanta. Dallas has lost a bunch of games in a row. They got Cooper Flagg back, but they're not playing well. They were just in Toronto. They lost again. Their schedule's been pretty packed. They're playing a lot of road games in quick succession here. They had a back-to-back on Thursday and Friday, so they're playing a 4th game in 6 days, a 5th game in 8 days, a 6th game in 10, all in different cities. Not that easy, but they did get pretty embarrassed, losing by 30 points to Toronto in their last game. So when that happens, a lot of times you will see the team try to put in an effort in the next game. Atlanta has won a bunch of games in a row, so we have opposing streaks coming into play here with Atlanta winning 6 in a row. Dallas losing probably more than 6 in a row at this point. Atlanta coming off a decent win over Philadelphia. They've had a couple of days off, which I don't think is helpful, man. When you are rolling like this, you don't want to have a ton of time off. You know what I mean? It could hurt your momentum a little bit. So I would lean to Dallas in this game, but I do worry about the rest situation for them. But Atlanta's a big favorite, 9.5. The money's agreeing with me on this one, too. 86% of the tickets, only 75% of the cash on the Hawks. I would take the points with the Mavericks in that game. Toronto is at Houston. Toronto coming off that blowout win over Dallas, but I think it does mean they have momentum now. They're starting a road trip here. You'll probably get an effort out of Toronto. Toronto, by the way, they're actually a little bit better on the road than they are at home. So Toronto's a pretty good road team for what it's worth. Starting a road trip with a little bit of momentum. They won't be overconfident after killing Dallas, I don't think. I think they will show up because Houston's a good team. Houston coming into this game off a blowout loss. It was a big game against San Antonio, but they got embarrassed. So I could see it going two ways because you get up for that game emotionally, man. So sometimes even if you get blown out, you won't bounce back from a game like that right away. And Houston does have Denver on deck in an ESPN game tomorrow. So I would lean to Toronto in this game. The money is slightly disagreeing with me, it looks like, with the Rockets, a 5-point favorite here. The line hasn't really moved much. 62% of tickets, 67% of the cash on the Rockets. I think I would lean towards taking the points with the Raptors in that game, though. My Boston Celtics are at San Antonio. This is the first of the NBC Peacock doubleheader here. The Celtics, I think they lost at home to San Antonio earlier this year. San Antonio's really good, man. I guess it's a little bit of a revenge motive for the Celtics if they care about that. That was a 5-point San Antonio win back on January 10th. Of course, the Celtics have Jason Tatum now. But the Celtics are coming off a really nice win against Cleveland. Very satisfying win against a potential playoff opponent. And they swept the season series with Cleveland. Big win for the Celtics. Now they're starting a road trip. I would say usually you're going to get focus out of a team starting a road trip. And yeah, the Celtics should bring focus against a team like San Antonio. But they're coming off a big win against Cleveland. They got Oklahoma City on deck. They can't focus, they can't give it 100% effort in every one of these games. You know what I mean? Just, it's against, human nature. You just can't do it. At some point, you're going to be too tired. San Antonio's coming off a very satisfying blowout win over Houston, though. And they do have Denver on deck. So I don't love the spot particularly for either team here, but I can tell you the money is really indicating on the Spurs here. They're up to a 3.5-point favorite. Celtics, 56% of the tickets on them, 78% of the cash on the Spurs. So the money is saying the Spurs here. I'm not really going to disagree with it. Not a strong opinion from me on that game, though. An under might be in consideration in that one, except for the fact that I don't love the spot for either team. Both teams, both teams should bring focus in this game. I lean towards overs when I think teams are going to either lack in focus or be really tired. You could make the argument they'll be tired off those previous games, but the money is indicating on the under, and it is a pretty low total at 222. It's only dropped a point. And under kind of makes sense. And the Celtics, even though tempo doesn't matter as much in the NBA, the Celtics do play the slowest pace in the NBA, and they also are the second best defense in the NBA. So things to keep in mind there. Chicago is at Golden State. Chicago coming off a pretty bad loss at Sacramento. Kind of explainable because they had a nice win over Phoenix the game before that. So they were in kind of a letdown spot. Maybe they will bounce back here for a game against a better team like Golden State. Golden State's not exactly great, though, and they're missing a lot of guys still. Have no idea when Curry's coming back. Butler obviously is not coming back. Golden State is returning home from a road trip here, and they played last night. So not a great spot for Golden State here. But they did lose last night to Utah. Not a great loss, but still, they're returning home from a road trip. They were on the road since Thursday, so it was not a long road trip. I like to fade teams returning home from long road trips, but still a road trip nonetheless. Coming back from elevation, they're on a back-to-back. They're playing a third game in 4 days. 4th and 6th, all in different cities, having to cross time zones here with no time off. And again, when you return home, a lot of times it's a distracted spot. You got to get back to home life. And they have a couple of big games on deck against Minnesota and the Knicks. So I might be talking myself into an additional play here, man. The Bulls are staying on the Pacific Coast here, so they're already adjusted to the time zone. Ugly loss from them. Let's look at the injury report real quick here. Giddey is a game-time decision again, it looks like here. Ankle injury. I don't know. Is he going to play? He played in their last game. He's probable, so he will play. Simons is still out for the Bulls. He hasn't played much for them since the Celtics traded him over there. Jalen Smith looks like he is going to play. He came back in their last game. He didn't play well, though. So, actually, that's good for the Bulls. He's one of their better-ish players. He didn't play well in his first game back against Sacramento, so I think you could expect Smith was a little bit rusty and that he will play better in this game this time. Curry is still out. It looks like he's projected to come back in 3 days. I don't know if he will. The former Celtics in Porzingis and Horford are both game time decisions. Porzingis did not play in the last game. He still has an illness. I don't know what the fuck that even is. Horford has a toe injury. Why does that stuff keep these guys out? I have no idea. There's something weird going on with Porzingis, man. The NBA is just weird in general. But yes, I absolutely like the Bulls in this game. Warriors are a 6-point favorite, 75% of tickets on them, only 73% of the cash. Oh, man, it's tough. I like the Bulls here, man. I'm very tempted. I know I didn't add any other hockey plays to my card today. Trying to be very, very selective here. I mean, I guess one of my hesitations was the Warriors' road trip wasn't that long, and they had a bad loss to Utah. Those are really my hesitations with it. I'll stay off it, but I like the Bulls. If I was going to add another play to my card, it would definitely be the Bulls, plus the points there. All right, Charlotte and Portland. Charlotte didn't do well in Phoenix in their last game, and I told you, man, Phoenix, very good against the spread. They're pretty good at home as well. Nice win for Phoenix there. Charlotte's lost 2 games in a row now. Might be in bounce back mode now. They're adjusted to the not adjusted to the Pacific Coast, but adjusted to a more Western time zone. Let's say they're going up to Portland, but they did beat Portland at home by double digits not that long ago. So it could be a little bit of a revenge or adjustment, zigzag spot, whatever you want to call it, for Portland here. Portland is already back at home. They actually did well in a return home spot, believe it or not. I lost on that game, so isn't that just great? On Indiana, Portland still had a nice game in that one in the return home spot. I think it's a decent spot for them to still show up against Charlotte here, so I don't want anything to do with this game. The money is indicating on the Blazers, though. The Hornets are a 3.5 point road favorite. 66% of tickets, 63% of the cash on the Hornets. So the money indicating on the Trailblazers in that one. I don't disagree with it, but not really a strong opinion there. Indiana at Sacramento. This is a bad game, dude. You don't know what you're going to get out of either of these teams. They're both really injured. They're both just playing out the stretch now. Indiana couldn't even put in an effort against a Portland team in a bad spot. Indiana coming off of that. Maybe they will show up for a game against Sacramento. Just because they've been losing every game. Sacramento did finally put in an effort and beat Chicago, but that ended a losing streak, so maybe that's good for Sacramento. Maybe they have some momentum now coming into this game, and they look like the team that's putting in more effort right now. Kings have flipped to a 3-point favorite in this one. When would you ever want to lay points with the Kings, man? 69% of tickets, 98% of the cash on the Pacers, though. So the money's coming in on the Pacers. I kind of lean to the Kings. I don't know, man. There's no way that I would have my money on the side in this game in any way. The over might be in consideration here because when you got two teams that are playing out the stretch, a lot of times you just won't get a lot of defensive intensity. You know what I mean? Kind of like that last week in the NFL when teams, if you got two teams with nothing to play for, playing each other, players don't want to get injured and stuff like that. It kind of turns into a scrimmage. This could be that type of game, but the total's already gone up about 4 points, so you're losing some value on the total there. It's at 236 now, but an over would probably be preferable to the side in that game. And then that means my play is actually in the NBC Peacock late game, Minnesota at the Lakers. This is the best bet. Let's do it. We're going to play the Minnesota Timberwolves in this game. This is one of those games where it's a team is never as good as they look in their worst game, and a team is never as good as they look in their best game. Team is never as bad as they look in their worst, and I think that's what we have going on in this game. Minnesota's a road favorite for a reason, by the way, because the Lakers are not as good as people think they are. They're certainly not a good defensive team. Minnesota, I know they did just have a win streak snapped, and a lot of times I don't like that when a team has a win streak snapped. They'll be hung over, but this spot looks really good for Minnesota because it was a horrible performance for them. They got blown out by Orlando, but if you dig into that box score, It wasn't really what it looked like, except, well, yeah, Orlando did dominate them in the paint, which I don't love. But other than that, Minnesota had one of the worst shooting performances you'll ever see. 36% from the field. That's just not going to do anything, man. So I think you're going to get some positive regression from Minnesota. They're not going to shoot that poorly again. They have a couple of days off. I know I don't like when teams have to go start a road trip on the Pacific Coast, but at least for Minnesota, they have 2 days off to try to adjust to it. They're coming off a loss. You know they're going to be focused after an embarrassing home loss like that. Starting a road trip as well is usually a focus spot. And at least they're not an East Coast team, so they can more easily adjust to the time zone for that reason. But this also is not a good spot for the Lakers, because the Lakers just had an extremely impressive blowout win over the Knicks. That's got to be really, really satisfying, man. And even though I guess they'll still show up for a TV game against Minnesota, I think, is definitely the better team here and in the much better spot here. The Lakers also beat Minnesota both times they played them this year. So I think Minnesota has a little bit of kind of revenge in mind here. The Lakers, I think that was revenge for the Lakers for getting bounced from the playoffs last year by Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. So the Lakers pretty much already got their revenge now, and I think that's kind of on the other foot now. The Lakers beat Minnesota the second game of the season to get that revenge by 18. I think I actually gave out the Lakers as a play in that one. And then they actually won at Minnesota in October by 1. These teams haven't played since then. And you remember my complaint about Minnesota back then was Minnesota can't beat good teams. They hadn't beaten any team with a winning record for a long time. But Minnesota's still one of the better teams in the NBA. And since then, you know, they've started beating better teams. I mean, they have wins against Oklahoma City, Denver recently. You know, they've beaten some of the best teams. They've beaten San Antonio. Yeah, so that's out the window now. They've beaten some of the best teams in the NBA. Oklahoma City multiple times, in fact. The Knicks, whatever. You know, Minnesota's for real. I think they're one of the top teams in the entire NBA, to be honest. They're up to a 3-point favorite now. I found a 2 out there. You probably can still find 2.5s, I think, at the very least out there. 51% of tickets, 70% of the cash on the T-Wolves. We're playing the T-Wolves, so we have 2 road favorites here. Go figure. 2 small road favorites. That's going to do it. Those are my plays today. College basketball, take the points with Mercyhurst in the basically fake NEC final now, because Long Island is already in the NCAA tournament. So very, very rare spot with the ineligibility transition stuff. We're going to take Mercyhurst there. Hockey, we got the Islanders on the money line. We're keeping it really limited today. 2 small road favorites, and then the T-Wolves minus the points in the NBA. That's it. Let's have some wins today, man. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I appreciate it. Kyle, thanks for hanging out. Zach, Mr. Pinsey, all the regulars, I appreciate it, guys. Noted Gems, thanks for hanging out as well, man. Uncut Gems. I should rewatch that at some point. I kind of forget the movie. I don't know, but I'm watching that guy's new movie right now to prepare for the Oscars, which I know sounds terrible, but it's Marty Supreme. It's certainly not the worst of the Oscar contenders, all right? It can't be. Like, I'm kind of enjoying it, even though it still has, you know, the typical stupid, you know, mainstream history narrative bullshit that goes on there, you know, related to that thing that you're not allowed, the one thing that you're really not allowed to talk about. But it's still a pretty entertaining movie, and I'm not a fan of Timothée Chalamet at all, but this is like probably his best role that I've ever seen him in, where he's kind of this like douchebag ping pong player, so, you know, in the 1950s and whatever, so, you know, more suitable role there. I'm kind of enjoying it so far. That's gonna do it. Learn to Toad on Twitter. You can subscribe to me there if you want to throw me some support. Learn to Toad on Instagram, and I put out short form content like this on there, reiterating my plays. Like, subscribe here, of course. Boost the channel, man. Give me, you know, leave me replies. Tell everybody about it. Noted Gems, tell everybody about it, everybody. Mr. Pinsey has told people about it. What else do I have to plug here? This show is also on audio, Apple and Spotify. You can listen over there. It is monetized. I don't get much from it, but you can listen over there. Give me good reviews over there. Boost that stuff. I have a ukulele cover channel, Covered in Uke. That's on YouTube as well. You can check that out. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. If you want to just throw me some support. I try to throw in, I have some bonus Ute content I try to throw in there. I'm not very good at keeping up with it and doing the requests or whatever. I apologize. Maybe I shouldn't have offered it. It's just, the requests just get a little bit insane. I'm going to probably have to do something about that and be like, I'm going to limit it to, just doing covers at my discretion, basically. And then Loser Cast will be back tonight at 10 p.m., so you can check that out if you want me in a more comedy setting. You can go check that out tonight. I haven't picked a loser for tonight yet. Got to figure something out. I need a loser. All right. Yes, I do the theme song for that show as well. That's going to do it. Thanks, guys. I'll be back tomorrow morning, I suppose. We're getting the brackets are going to be out on Sunday, man, and then it becomes crunch time. Monday is the crunch day where you got to crunch everything, try to figure out what you want to do with your bracket. Last year I did a reaction show on Sunday night, so I might still do that. And then I did my bracket, I think, on the last day, like when the last play-in games were happening. I think I did my bracket special on Wednesday night where I showed you me filling out my actual bracket. I only fill out one. Bracket of integrity, like Mike Greenberg. Is it Greeny that does that? I think it is. I think it's him. I was more of a fan of Golick, though, because I'm always more of a fan of the large men that like to eat. So, on the Mike and Mike show that used to exist, but I think they hated each other probably, and that's why that show broke up. And then, there's going to be a lot more bracket content. I'm also going to fill out my women's bracket. That one I put way less effort into. You see, I get all the spreadsheets, and I do all the game theory for the men's one. The women's bracket is really... Women's has, no parity, dude, so it's really just, pick the best teams in the women's. So I just don't put as much effort into that one, and I usually have a pretty good bracket anyway. UConn is going to win, okay? They're an undefeated team, and they're, easily the best team. So, oh, my God, I just gave it away already. So the women's bracket, you got to find, leverage points otherwise in the bracket, but you can still do that. Because everybody's going to be picking the same champion, and it's probably not the incorrect champion. So that's going to do it, man. But, yeah, we'll have a lot of bracket content. March Madness is in full swing. The games start shortly. Peace, guys.